In our last session, we touched on the importance of pre-approval prior to home hunting. Today, we're going to touch on what exact documentation a borrower will need to provide to apply and get their letter of pre-approval. Essentially, a financial and situational portfolio is created of this borrower to prove what loan amount they can afford. But remember, everything has to be proven, and documentation is what's needed to do so. First things first, let's talk about what baseline documents everyone will need to provide. First off, federal tax returns. Typically, the past 2 years of tax returns will need to be provided. Do not take out any pages, as every single page needs to be present. Number 2, W-2s and 1099s. Same thing here, the past 2 years of these documents will need to be provided. Number 3, pay stubs. Pay stubs are required to prove income. Borrowers will need to provide their most recent pay stubs from the past 30 days. This gives the lender an idea of what their monthly income is. If you're self-employed, hang in there. We'll outline the documents you need to provide later in this course. Number 4, asset statements. These include bank accounts, checkings and savings, 401ks, etc. All pages are required, even if they're blank, so do not remove any pages when you provide this documentation. Statements from the past 2 months will be necessary to provide. Lenders need an idea of what the borrower's assets are, as this plays into their equity and their financial status. Number 5, current mortgage and homeowner's insurance statements. The lender will want to see what the borrower currently pays monthly and what they're comfortable paying. They will have to give all of their monthly expenses to come up with their debt-to-income ratio. If you're a first-time homebuyer, these documents will not be needed. Number 6, driver's license. In order to prove identity, the borrower's driver's license or government-backed ID will need to be provided. Now, some people have situational circumstances that require them to provide more documentation. This isn't because the lenders are nosy, per se. They just want to make sure the large amount of funds they're lending can be repaid by the borrower. The first situation is a self-employed applicant. For self-employed applicants, proving their financial situation and income is a little bit different. In addition to the list previously outlined, they'll need to provide their business tax returns from the past 2 years. As a business owner, this is part of your personal finances as well. Again, remember, all pages are required of this, even if they're blank. The second situation is a retired applicant. For a retired applicant, they essentially need to prove that they're receiving regular income. Some examples of documents they may need is a Social Security award letter. A copy of the current year's is required. A 1099 statement for their Social Security. Typically, the past 2 years are required here. A pension or any investment savings. The borrower will provide a letter showing their monthly amount for 1099s and letters from any other organizations that provide them any sort of regular income. And moving on, we have divorced applicants. Another common situation is a divorced parent that's receiving child support or alimony. In this scenario, the additional income must be documented through a divorce decree, a child support order, and the deposit of that in the account if applicable, and the alimony deposit, again, if applicable, for the past year. For these deposits, they're typically seen in the bank statements. If further documentation is needed, the borrower's mortgage lending team will advise them of that. All in all, notice how much documentation is needed to support the financial portfolio of the applicant. It's important to know this ahead of time, as you can start rallying the documents you're going to be needing prior to the process. It's beneficial to submit all documentation within 48 hours or 2 days, so having this ready ahead of time will minimize the stress during this process.